They say money can't buy happiness, but this billionaire took it to heart. A little spent millions escaping fame. So why would a guy with so much money do something so crazy? What was the billionaire running from, and what did he find in the end? Let's find out. His life was a tangled web of obligations, expectations, distractions and noise. He was drowning in a sea of information, entertainment and stimuli. Every morning he woke up with the sunrise and meditated on the dunkest dress. Every afternoon he worked on his treehouse, and every evening he cooked his own meals on his wood-burning stove. He immersed himself in the rhythm of nature. The event flow of the seasons, seasons of the beds, the babble of the brook, the rustle of the leaves. He reveled in the beauty of simplicity, the joy of creation, the peace of solitude. But then something happened. One day he was chopping wood and he struck something hard. He dug in the dirt and found a box filled with letters. They were love letters he had written to his wife when they first met. He read them and laughed, cried, smiled, sighed. He remembered a time when he was young and hopeful, when he dreamed of adventures and romance. When he felt connected to his emotions. He realized that he had lost something precious along the way, something that made life worth living. Something that gave life meaning. He had lost his sensitivity. He had closed off his heart to avoid feeling pain. He had numbed his feelings with busyness and distractions. But now he was feeling them all at once, and it was overwhelming. He stumbled back to his treehouse and collapsed on his bed. He didn't want to feel anymore. He wanted to escape again, to run away from his feelings. But then he had a voice inside him that said, "Stop. DONTRUN.FILC.CONNIZT. Remember WHO you are." And they did. He felt his feelings, and he connected with himself. And he remembered that he was a man WHO loved deeply and passionately, a man WHO cared about others and valued relationships, a man WHO had a purpose and a mission. He craved some breathing room, a chance to unplug and recharge. Time had lost its meaning for him. He was living in the moment. He was present. He was aware. He was grateful. But then something changed. He started feeling restless again. He missed his life. He missed his work. He missed his people. He missed his passion. He missed his purpose. He realized that he had found himself in the process of losing himself. He had escaped his life to save his life. He had abandoned his career to reclaim his soul. He had rejected his fame to rediscover his roots. But now he was ready to return to his life, to embrace his work, to reconnect with his people, to revive his passion, to rekindle his purpose. He picked up his things and left his treehouse behind. He knew that he would never forget what he had learned there, that he would carry it with him wherever he went, that it would guide him in whatever he did. He returned to his life transformed. He was the same, yet different. He was still the brilliant businessman, but now he was also a wise philosopher. He was still the successful entrepreneur, but now he was also a peaceful yogi. He was still a famous celebrity, but now he was also a humble servant. He had discovered a secret of voluntary simplicity. He had learned that true wealth was not about having everything, but about needing nothing. I had found the courage to let go of the things that didn't matter and to hold on to the things that did. I had realized that the treehouse wasn't an escape from his life, but a return to his life, and so lived the rest of his life with intention, authenticity, and impact. He used his wealth and influence to help others find their own treehouses, to support casas that aligned with his values, to make a difference in the world. He became a conscious leader who walked the talk. WHO led by example, WHO inspired others to follow suit. He showed them that it was possible to be successful and simple, to be rich and wise, to be powerful and peaceful. He proved that the most successful people are not those who never fall, but those who know how to climb back up. He was a billionaire, WHO escaped fame and found himself. But where could he go? How could he escape the glare of the public eye? How could he find some peace and quiet? That's when I remembered a place from his childhood, a sanctuary nestled in the woods, a treehouse from his past. The idea sparked within him like a wildfire. He decided to build a treehouse, a place where he could hide away from the world and reconnect with himself. Why did he choose a treehouse? Because it represented a return to his origins. He wanted to go back to the roots of his being. He wanted to feel grounded in nature. He wanted to redispose of his civilization. He wanted to shed the layers of culture and convention that had been weighing him down. He wanted to strip himself bare and reveal his raw humanity. He wanted to be seen for who he was instead of who he was supposed to be. He wanted to find the child within him who had been lost in the labyrinth of his adult life. He wanted to rediscover the wonder and curiosity that had been dulled by the grind and the hustle. I wanted to remember that life was not just about climbing high and climbing fast, but also about looking out and looking within. I wanted to realize that the treehouse was not just a place to hike, but a place to heal. Chapter 1, The Golden Cage. When I arrived at the site of his childhood treehouse, I found it dilapidated and overgrown, but he didn't mind. I saw it as a challenge, an opportunity to create something new and meaningful. I spent weeks working on the project, hemming, sewing, painting, designing. I poured his heart and soul into it, and the result was stunning. I had created a cozy and comfortable retreat that overlooked a Lachen Valley. It had a wooden floor, a thatched roof, a stone fireplace, a rope carpet, and a ladder that led to a lookout deck. It was rustic yet elegant, simple yet sophisticated, humble yet inspiring. But it was more than just a treehouse. It was a symbol of hope, a beacon of joy, a monument of meaning. It was a place where I could be himself, where I could relax, where I could reflect, where I could recharge, where I could reconnect with his purpose. I discovered that the true luxury was not in the appearance of his surroundings, but in the solitude of his thoughts. I could finally have some time to think without being interrupted by anyone or anything. I could finally have some space to feel without being judged by anyone or anything. I could finally have some silence to hear without being drowned out by anyone or anything. I could finally have some stillness to be. There was once a billionaire, WHO had everything money could buy, mansions, yachts, cars, beautiful women. But despite all of his riches, I felt a growing sense of emptiness inside. I was trapped in a golden cage of his own making, and the bars were getting bigger by the day. As he climbed high and high, I noticed that I got thinner and thinner, making it harder and harder to breathe. It was a strange paradox. The more connected he became digitally, the more alone he felt in reality. His mansion had more bedrooms than friends, more bedrooms than family members. When he looked at his phone, I saw thousands of followers. But when I looked at his face, I saw no one looking back. I knew that something was wrong, that there was a fundamental mismatch between the size of his life and the scale of his soul. But he couldn't quite put his finger on it. What was the hidden cost of his extreme success? What was the price he was paying for his fame and fortune? What was the one thing he couldn't buy back no matter how much money he had? It was his identity. I had lost sight of who he really was. I had sacrificed his authenticity at the altar of achievement. I had traded his uniqueness for uniformity. I had become a character in a movie he didn't write. I was living someone else's dream. I had sold his future for quick cash. I had chopped down the tree of his life to make a chair for success. I had picked up speed to avoid feeling still. I had embraced complexity to avoid simplicity. I had buried his emotions and debussiness. And now he was reaping the whirlwind of his choices. I was suffering from the success syndrome. And the only cure for that was to find a way out of the gilded cage, to break free of the shackles of his own making. I needed to discover the secret of voluntary simplicity. I needed to learn to live with less so he could live with more. I needed to find a way to get lost in order to find himself. Chapter 2, The Psychology of Escape. This rich man had reached a breaking point. Chapter 3, Transformation through Simplicity. Chapter 4. The unexpected discovery that changes everything. Established a routine for himself. Chapter 5, The Return. Stayed in his treehouse for months, maybe years. I didn't know.